Our regrets are stories we tell ourselves. When you constantly worry about your past, you're supporting that belief in your present. We were curious about what would happen if we tried to release those worries and rewrite our stories. So we decided to do an experiment.
What happens if we dedicate time to relieving our regrets? This is a show where we take a moment to reveal the messy bits about ourselves without judgment. It's a show where we can reflect, learn, grow, and maybe even laugh about our actions, attitudes, and behaviors. It's a place where we can speak about our past and learn from it. Join us on the journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Relieve Regrets. My name is Shadoe Ball, and I'm here with...
And my name is Victoria Muir-Bercia.
And we're your co-hosts on today's episode of the podcast. And before we get into our content today, how are you feeling today, Victoria?
How am I feeling today? I'm like 7 out of 10.
Okay.
7 out of 10.
That's pretty high. Like, I'm not high. It's moderate, I guess.
Well, it's moderate for
moderate
me.
to high.
I'm a pretty hyper person, right? So
Right.
7 out of 10 is like 7 out of 10 is moderate for me.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on in life, waiting for some healthcare stuff to happen. So I'm just chilling out, taking care of myself. How are you?
Good.
What's your check-in on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm good. I definitely want to like break into that song, like waiting is the hardest part. But I'm going to restrain myself from actually singing it. Yeah, no, this week's pretty good. I haven't had a lot on my plate this week. I had a few doctor's appointments that ended up just kind of being normal, which is exciting, obviously. It just means I have a few more questions than answers, but that's okay. And yeah, I would say, yeah, 7.5. Like, I do think there's room for improvement. It's still early afternoon, and I'm planning on trying out a brand new dinner recipe tonight. So that will be my moment of joy later today.
Is that your cause for applause?
No, I have a totally different cause.
What's your cause for applause?
So it's going to sound kind of silly, but I'm starting to notice more gray hair on my front part here. And contrary to many women my age, I love gray hair.
What?
Yes. It's really important to me that we start reframing signs of aging as signs of living. And
I love that saying. Oh my gosh, say it again.
Okay, so I want to change or reframe all of our signs of aging to signs of living. And for me, one of those signs is getting gray hair. And I know maybe when I go more gray, maybe I'll be more self-conscious about it, or maybe I'll want to dye it more or whatever. But right now I have like 2 or 3 that are just really cute, and they're just like right here in my center part. And they make me really happy.
Oh my gosh. I've been fighting it so much. So I had the 2 or 3 start maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, but now it's like 20 in my part. And
yeah.
I have like really, really dark brown hair, so it really shows up.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also, for those of you that have never seen a picture of me, you can go to our Instagram. I also have purple hair. So, but right now when I have roots, I feel like they really show up. And then I have my purple hair and my like black roots. But I think it's really brave. I think one of the bravest things you can do, and maybe brave is the wrong word because you're wanting to reframe it, is like to let your hair go gray.
Yeah, I think for me, I've already had so many other problems with body image and stuff that like my hair has always just been something that like I didn't care much about. And also when I was in high school, I had purple hair and I had the pink hair and the green hair, and I bleached my hair every 2 weeks and like destroyed my scalp.
2 weeks?
every 2 weeks I would bleach out all the manic panics. So I would have a fresh canvas and then we would like put more color in.
Yikes.
And then sometimes I would dye it like black for fun. And then like, yeah, it was bizarre. Like I did so much damage to my scalp that I feel like it's only been in the last 2 or 3 years that it's really come back to like its healthy nature. But my hair's so thick as well that like it, like everyone was like, oh, you're going to go bald and you're going to this and you're going to that. And like, I wish my hair would start thinning out a bit. But again, maybe maybe I need to like knock on some wood and stuff. Cause maybe 10 years from now, this gets played and they're like, see, you said you wanted your hair to thin out. And I'm there like crying with my bald spots. But as of right now, I'm seeing very healthy gray hairs and just, it's one of those things that maybe it's cliche or like, maybe it's going to sound delusional to some of our listeners. But I know someone who died very young, not very young, not like a child, which is obviously its own tragedy, but someone who was in their early 30s and they had a chronic illness that they knew about since they were a child. So for them, every time they had a new sign of aging, it was a sign of living for them. So like they were supposed to pass away as a youth and then like they turned 16 and got their license. And then like, there's all those like milestones of youth, but there's also milestones of getting older. And every time this person passed one of those milestones, they were very, very proud of themselves. And I feel like you shouldn't need to have a chronic illness to view your life that way. Yeah. So that's again,
I think that's such an amazing, oh my gosh, such an amazing reframe. I'm trying to reframe. It's funny. I gave a workshop the other day talking about reframing around time and all of these things. And I guess aging goes along with it. These things about like, we're running out of time. I don't have enough time. Like we have a very unhealthy relationship with time in North America. Right. Like, and then even some of the sayings I think that are like supposed to help you feel better, I actually still perpetuate our unhealthy relationship with time. Like time is money.
Okay.
Right.
Well, yeah.
It's still very unhealthy to say like, we're basically told we can't do nothing with our time and doing nothing with your time is okay because that's also self-care or whatever you want to call it. But also our relationship with time comes from a place of scarcity. Always.
Right.
It never comes from a place of abundance. Oh my gosh, it's 2:00 already in the afternoon. I only have a couple more hours left of daylight today or whatever, right? Like it's always from a place of scarcity. And I think aging is the same way. For example, like when I turned 40, everyone's like, oh, 40, it's a big year. It's a big milestone.
Right.
But then I started saying, okay, well, I don't know about you, but I plan on living to be 100. But I've only lived 40% of my life. I'm not even at 50%. I still have 60% left. You know, people get into this thing where they're like, I'm 40. It's too late for me to learn something new, to go back to school. I'm 50. It's too late for me to learn. I'm 60. It's too late. Like I'm too old to change. That's such bullshit. Because if you actually look at the spectrum of time, we have a lot of time, but we've just been preconditioned to look at time through scarcity. And then we're afraid of it. We're afraid of aging because we start to think we don't have enough time. So I don't want to have gray hair. Right. I don't want to have wrinkles. So it's a vanity thing, but I also think it's also connected to our unhealthy relationship with the concept of time too. So thank you for being a role model about the gray hair, Shadoe.
And I'm not saying this as like a rebuff just because I rebuff compliments. I just think it's like, it's not that big of a deal. But
well, you want it to not be that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's all it is.
We want society to not make it that big.
What about you? What do you have for a cause?
You know what's so funny
today?
My cause for applause is also my hair. Yay. I've been kind of bored, haven't been able to see my hairdresser, wanting to save some money. I cut my own bangs this week and I actually think they look okay. There's just one spot that might be a little blunt and a little short. I did like a little side fringe, everyone, like the side bangs or the curtain bangs. Is that what they're called? So they're not straight up bangs on my forehead, but bangs on either side. Pretty proud of myself. I watched a YouTube video, cut my own bangs. Nice. Dangerous, risky business, you know. But it turned out okay.
Nice. Anyone who's considering cutting their own hair, go little by little and cut less than you think you need to cut every time. And as you get better at it, you'll get better at it. I've been cutting my own hair since high school. In high school, because I had all the colorful hair, I really wanted my hair to look really like edgy. So I would cut it in all these like weird ways. And then I would wash my hair and it would all fall perfectly the next day. And I'd be like, what the F? But now, again, as an adult, I see it as just definitely like a benefit to my hair. So I can do some things where what I usually do is I braid my hair into 4 braids, like 2 pigtails in the back and 2 pigtails in the front kind of thing. And then I cut just the like tip of the pigtail. Right. Kind of thing. So I do that probably like once a month, honestly. And it definitely like helps me go between haircuts.
That's helpful because I was thinking of giving myself a trim too, but of course I started with the big thing, not the small thing with the bangs.
But you didn't go too high up. Like your bangs look great. So
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. So if anyone out there is listening, also in our group, like maybe you have tips for how to cut your own hair at home. And or any other kind of at-home beauty tips, because we've touched on a few of those today. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to say this. I don't regret cutting my bangs.
Nice.
But let's get into some things that we do want to release today. Whose turn is it?
I think you're going first today, but I could go first. It really doesn't matter to me, but if you like.
I think it's me. I think you went first last time.
All right. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to like pre-share with us before you get into your letter?
I literally don't know why I've been avoiding this one so much. Like I feel so much shame around it. Just like ridiculous because it's something that happened when I was a kid. Like I was like, how old are you in grade 4? Like 8 or 9?
9, yeah.
9. It's
the grade plus 5 years. That's usually the math for me anyway.
Oh, I've never thought of it that way. Okay. Yeah. So 9. Okay. Smart. Another trick I learned from Shadoe today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I don't know why this one like gives me the shame heebie-jeebies for some reason. It's kind of ridiculous. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say.
Like a deep breath before you start.
Yeah, no, it's not even like traumatic. It just gives me like the shave heebie-jeebies.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So I have an experience that I want to let go of in order to move forward or just to release out of the back corner of my brain. So here it is. So when I was in grade 4, we were going on a class trip to the Toronto Zoo. And this was a big class trip because we didn't live in Toronto. So it was we were coming from a town outside of Toronto. And so when I was in grade 4, I had kind of like these 2 best friends. I hung around with all the boys, which is funny because we've talked about this before. Most of my friends were boys. And we all kind of lived within a 2-block radius of each other too. And I think that's why. So it just happened that I was like the only girl in my age. And it was like 5 or 6 boys and we all lived within a 2-block radius of each other. So we kind of grew up since kindergarten. But anyways, so on this particular class trip, there were parent chaperones going. And one of my friends' mom was going and my mom was going. And we were close with all the parents too. And I remember the teacher pulled us all aside like one by one and was like, which parent would you like to be in the group when you're walking around the zoo? Now, the like week before I'd been hanging out at my friend's house and his mom had said, oh, I'm going to be a chaperone. I'd love you to be in the group together. So I said her name instead of my mom's. And then I remember immediately being like, it was almost like a peer pressure thing. Like it was like, I want to be with them. So I have to go with his mom. Not even a peer pressure, like a social pressure thing, I guess. And my mom took it so well. Like, I'm just like, how could I do that to my mom? Like my mom was like coming with us on this trip. And then I remember being at the zoo and I think we were at like the elephants and my mom walked by with her group. And oh my God, I feel like so much shame around this. And I think it's because my relationship with my mom was very tumultuous in my teenage years. And I think it probably started when I was probably around the age of 9 or 10. And we've been really working on healing our relationship in like adult life. I think that might be why I feel so much shame. But I just remember my mom came over with her group and I remember being like, mom, look at the elephant. And then in my heart, I was like, wait a minute, I want to be with my mom. But then I was like stuck in this other group because I'd been assigned to that group. And, you know, there's rules when you're on like class trips and stuff, right? Anyways, I've never said sorry to my mom. And I feel like it's something that I need to do. I like, honestly, I don't know why I feel so much shame and regret about it. And I guess one of the consequences of me like holding on to this like regret is maybe for me, maybe my mom doesn't even remember, but for me, I feel like it's like a thing I need to do to make my relationship better with my mom. So, and she might not even remember. I'll report back, everybody, because she might not even remember it, but I really remember it. And okay, so I did everything I could in that moment with the tools I had at that time, and that's okay. I was an 8-year-old kid and kind of felt that social pressure from my friend and from his mom too. It wasn't on purpose. It wasn't bullying, right? But I wanted to be with my friends and with the cool people. But when you're 8, you don't really understand the dynamics of that, right? So that's who I was then, and I've grown. And you know, I still feel like a little shameful about it, but a little relieved now. And I know that I'm worthy of forgiveness from my mom. So that's kind of the next step. And that's my story. That's my story. That's my mom and the zoo trip story. Oh my God.
Wow, that's wonderful. Actually, I really liked this story a lot. And the amount of detail with the story lets me know that it's something that you have been holding on to for, I mean, probably ever since that day.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm 40, so like 32 years.
Right.
Oh my God.
Do you want any feedback on this, Cher? Did you want to just...
Sure.
Okay.
Why did you like the story, I guess?
I get, like I said, like I really liked that I could see all aspects of it. Like the fact that it's an out of town trip, the fact that, you know, you picked your friend's mom, and that there was a previous discussion of picking your friend's mom. It wasn't just like out of the blue, or like it wasn't like you were doing it to get back at your mom for anything. It was just like something that happened, right? I also just really liked like that you were able to say that like she took it really well, and it's like been a self-inflicted pain on yourself. And I think that like when parents don't take things personally, that's such a gift. I think a lot of the things I feel bad about with my parents definitely comes from like me acting in a normal way as a child or a teenager, and it being taken so personally from them. And I feel like when you start talking about how like you don't even know if your mom remembers, I feel like if your mom does remember it, she remembers it differently than you do. So I would love to hear her side of it. Yeah, I don't know. And I feel like just the way like I could sense your vulnerability over it. I could picture you at like 8 years old outside the elephant exhibit, and I could like see the movie of it the way you were describing it. You know what I mean? Like when you like see a flashback scene in a movie, like I was right there. Like you provided like really good detail around that part of it. So yeah, so I just think like it's so interesting to me that you're holding on to this when like no one has told you that they hurt you, or that you hurt them. Sorry.
No, right?
Yeah.
I think
So this is very interesting to me.
so. It's interesting. So I think my mom, who's also like like a teacher, so she understands like
Right.
childhood development stuff. I mean, I think I hurt my mom a lot, but I think my
Right.
mom never told me. And I actually
Maybe.
think that's good parenting in some ways, because
Mm-hmm.
children sometimes don't know. Like I made the choice out of innocence. I wasn't making the
Mm-hmm.
choice to hurt her purposefully. Like I made
For
the choice out
sure.
of innocence. So whether I hurt her feelings or not, even if I did, she didn't show me because she was like, this is an innocent decision Victoria made. There's no point in punishing my 8-year-old
Right.
child for like not wanting to spend time with me.
Yeah.
Right. Basically. But I also think like instinctually, as soon as I did it, I felt guilt. Like as soon as I said to the teacher, I want to be in this group, I felt guilt. Like instinctually, I knew that like it wasn't the right decision. Like that it was do you know what I mean? Anyways.
Oh yeah. That immediate regret feeling, I think everyone recognizes.
Yeah. Like, and you can have it as a kid. I mean, we have it a lot as kids. Like I stole the candy out of the candy jar. I know it's wrong, but I'm still gonna eat the candy. Right. Like like instinctually we know like good behavior, right? Or good behavior is not the right answer, but empathy. We know empathy, right? Instinctually, it's part of us as human beings. But yeah, I'll let you guys know. I'll have a chat with my mom in the next couple months, and I'll let you guys know in a future recording. But it's just I feel so much shame about it. Anyways, it's out there now.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me know what you think, listeners. We'll do a post in the Instagram about it. We'll call it Victoria and the Zoo Trip, and you can let me know what you think too, because I think that's also, again, this experiment of talking about things that we regret and guilt and shame and all these things. A lot of times we go to things that are in our adult life. Right. But there's things that we were still a human being and a conscious human being when we were kids. Right. So, I mean, you may hold on to things from when you were a kid.
Oh, I think most people do. Yeah. I think so much the stuff that we do as children shapes us to be adults who either do things like, again, it's so interesting. It's like, I don't know. My hunch is that if you open this like can of worms, maybe with your mom, right? And you feel so bad about this trip, but then you're also like you hinted in your letter about having a tumultuous teenage time with your mom, which honestly, I think most people do. I don't like, I at least that makes me feel better that I think most teenagers have a hard time with their parents. Like, I wonder if there's something you don't remember from being a teenager that possibly hurt her more. You know what I mean? Like,
when I'm attaching it to this,
maybe, or like, cause it's just such like, for me, it sounds like this was the foundational piece. Yeah. That like, maybe it was kind of like the first time you like hurt your mom. So it's like every subsequent time you hurt your mom, like it's attached to this story. Versus like, anyway, that's just what I'm thinking of now. And now I'm thinking about like, I'm also thinking about this one time with my mom where we were picking blueberries in the forest. And my mom was always really like stern about it. Like when we woke up early on Saturday, we drove out to like the outskirts of Sudbury to do it. And then one time she just like scooped me up basically and like threw my blueberry bucket on the ground and like started pushing me. And was like, get to the car. And every time I turned around, she would just like push me more. And then I heard a growl sound.
Oh my God, there was a bear.
And but because I didn't know, and my mom's protecting me, and like she's throwing her blueberries down. She's like, you know, just like go. And like I hear the growling and I'm like, Mom, you should have eaten breakfast. Like, and I even said that, and she's like, shut up, and just like again pushing me. Then we get into the car. She gets me into my seat. And she runs around, and then I see the bear that's still fucking chasing us.
Oh my God.
Like basically clawing at the car when I get into the car. And I must have screamed for like a solid 3 minutes. Like, I don't think I stopped screaming. And again, I was around 8 or 9 years old. And then like every subsequent time we went blueberry picking, like I had to make a joke about it. And I had to be like such a little shit about like, oh, I hope we don't see a bear this time, Mom. Like, you know, like, and it's just like kids do funny stuff, obviously. But and lots of it is out of ignorance. And
it's also out of like our brain isn't fully developed until we're 25, right? So we have to like the things that we did as kids, we have to look back and remember we didn't have all the tools.
Totally.
We didn't have all the mental tools for things. So we have to be kind to ourselves and forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't have all the mental tools at 9 years old.
Yeah. I didn't have all the mental tools for this kind of stuff. Like, man, how do you patch that over without causing a new source of contention, I guess?
Well, that'll be interesting because you're right. My mom probably remembers it totally differently, or is like, whatever, you were a kid. Mm-hmm. And I'm the one that's been holding on to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, that also makes a lot of sense. And it's also like, I don't know, it really speaks to your character that you're holding on to this thing that, like, again, no one, like, your mom never told you that she was hurt.
No.
And you're still like self-inflicting this loop of shame and guilt onto it.
There's like some reason that my brain has like latched onto this story, but
yeah,
I've done the first step today. I've told a friend,
and
I told a friend who's not going to judge me about it and make me feel bad about it, which is the whole point of this experiment of telling our stories. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't judge you at all about it. I'm just so interested that it, like, to me, it's such a story that like sounds so innocent to me, and you're still so,
it did come from a place of innocence, for sure. Yeah.
And you're still so impacted by it, which is very sweet in a way, I guess. Like, you're a wonderful person.
That's the mom in the zoo trip, everybody.
I loved it.
Alrighty, ready for yours?
Let me just take a sip of water.
All right. Me too. Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm just going to get right into mine today. I feel like I should have maybe reread it because I think I wrote this like 4 months ago, but I'm just going to grip it and read it.
Let's do it.
Whew. Okay. I have an experience I need to let go of to move forward. I regret getting stuck in the fear of being bullied. I was bullied a lot in elementary school, and I've allowed that to shape my identity for a very long time. I won't go into details about the actual bullying because they're not really important to relieving this regret. Most kids that bully are being taught how to bully by their caretakers, and that alone is heartbreaking. This is tied to another regret that I have about bullying others, which is in another episode. The consequences I am missing out on due to holding on to this regret are that I keep myself in perpetual victimhood. I fear running into the people who bullied me, even though it's likely they don't remember me at all. I also don't even live in the same city I grew up in, so if I did run into them, it would be quite like a magical chance. As well, I regret not getting help for this earlier. I internalized a lot of shame about being different, and had I sought help earlier, I would have been able to come out of it even earlier. I did everything I could in those moments with the tools I had at the time, and that is okay. That is who I was then, and I have grown in so many ways. I am optimistic because I am now capable of seeing my self-worth and worthy of building an identity based in strengths instead of overcoming weaknesses.
Do you want feedback or just want to be heard?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of reminded me, there's this gym around the corner from me, and it has, like, you know, gyms like to put quotes up. It's just a small gym with a big window, like a storefront on a street. You know, gyms like to put quotes up.
Yeah.
And the quote is, would you rather be a victim or would you rather be a warrior, or something like that?
Right.
And I just think it's so harsh and not motivating. And like when you said, you know, your fear of like running into them puts you in like perpetual victimhood, what does that feel like?
It feels like not walking tall because you might get noticed. It feels like not speaking up because, you know, someone who made fun of you back then is still going to be there to make fun of you. It looks like not putting my more interesting ideas on social media and only putting up safe ideas that I think people will like. You know, and even with like something like this podcast, it shows up in like not wanting to do the harder parts of the podcast because those same kids are going to tell me that I did it wrong, or that I'm silly, or that I'm like I can't even like talk about the things they like said. Not that I like, and it's not because it's coming from, oh my gosh, I can't talk about it kind of way. It's coming from like it's so silly that it bothered me for so long that I'm kind of laughing at it now. Because
are you
like
laughing at it for defense, or are you really laughing at it?
I am moving to really laughing about it, because like I think about in grade 7 and in grade 8, I ran for student government.
Mm-hmm.
And like both times I didn't get in, and both times I was kind of like bullied for like even trying. But then like throughout high school, I did get in, and then throughout university, I did get in again. And like in university, I almost had to like walk away from student government in my last year, but I wasn't ready to do it in a way that like was a real choice. I decided to run against somebody who I knew I would lose to, because like then I could be like, oh no, I didn't win, and like then I could finally say goodbye to like student council.
Do you think that
Versus
also made you give victimhood a reason, like it allowed you to be in a different kind of victimhood, or almost the same victimhood, I guess?
Well, yeah, because it was like, oh, I have something to prove. Like I didn't get into student government in grade 7 and 8, so I'm going to be the student government person for the rest of my life. And like I didn't feel strong enough to walk away from it when it wasn't serving me anymore. So I like purposefully self-sabotaged it by running for a position that I knew I wouldn't get. So, and then also not putting my full effort into that campaign because I knew I was going to lose. And like that was fine with me, because I wanted a way out that didn't like make me a bad person, I guess.
Why would it make you a bad person if you said, I don't want to do this anymore?
Because it's like something my inner child wanted so badly, and to like take it away is like rude, I guess. I don't know.
I know it's a hard question, but I'm asking it because it has nothing to do with you being good or bad or kind or mean. It's, for lack of a better word, a hobby.
Totally.
I guess a hobby, like, or an extracurricular. It's an extracurricular, I guess, not a hobby.
Yeah.
It doesn't somehow, the idea of doing this became part of your identity. And I think that happens to a lot of us that were bullied as kids. The idea of doing the opposite or overcoming the bullying gets mixed in with what you said about like victimhood, but then it becomes part of our identity in almost a way where we're like not considering what our needs and wants actually are. We're just like, I need to be strong in this to overcome the trauma from that.
Right. Yeah.
And then you needed a way out. But then instead of saying, I don't want to do this anymore, you needed a way out because you felt like if I stop doing it, that means I'm a bad person. And I want to thank you for saying that, because I think people out here need to hear that. It doesn't make you a bad person. We can change what we like to do with our time at any age. And we're allowed to. You're allowed to. If you're exhausted from doing something, if you want to change what your job is, if you want to, right? Like we're allowed to. But for some reason, when we make those decisions, we think it has to do with being a good or a bad person. And it doesn't have to anything to do with that.
Yeah, I think sticking to your commitments makes you a good person. And I think like blowing off a commitment is what like maybe
But what if your commitment's hurting you? What if it's not healthy for you anymore?
Does that matter? Like that's how
Does you hurting yourself matter?
I mean, if the greater good is that
no.
Yeah. No,
you shouldn't be sacrificing your mental health for the greater good ever, because you can't help people. You can't pour from an empty cup.
But yeah, like that, I think is just still definitely ingrained in my brain as well. And definitely like this idea that like I'm meant to help a lot of people. And so like the only way I can not help people is by not having things. Which is, that's a whole other thing. Like now I'm kind of like a victim to bad credit, because like, you know, I have a bad credit rating right now. And that's due to a lot of things, but I definitely think part of it is that I started feeling responsible for a lot of other people in my life. And the only way to like not be responsible for them is to not have my stuff together. Like I can't lend money.
Oh, I see. I understand that. I think a lot of people go into that pattern. Thank you for vocalizing that so well.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't look after myself and don't fill my cup, people won't expect me to look after them too.
Yeah.
If my cup, if I keep my cup empty
mm-hmm.
and therefore stay in victimhood,
mm-hmm.
people will see me as the victim and not ask me to be the hero.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's all wrapped up in both parts of this, is that I guess because I was neglected the taking care of that I so desperately wanted when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Like now I'm kind of like resentful of anyone needing my care. So now I just, I try to not care about people, but in doing so, I have to like not care about myself. I don't know. Now I'm just spiraling. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore.
So I'll stop you there. So that's like a protective wall there too.
Yeah.
So I have, okay, I only have 2 more questions because I think we could probably talk about this for hours and again, I think it's really helpful to tell these stories for our listeners because so many people can get caught in the spiral. And I connect with what you're saying too, because I was also bullied as a child. When do you learn? Have you learned? How have you learned? Or if you haven't learned, to say, F it, I don't care what people think of me.
I feel like I've only been able to do that in like a performative way. I think technically I still do really care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it shows up in like the risks I don't take. That's where it shows up in a big way. And in other ways, like not only do I stop myself from taking bigger risks, I only allow myself certain opportunities that like align with this image I want to put out there, I guess.
And how does that image relate to the person that was bullied?
I realized that like when I was bullied, it was because I was too much. Like I was like person with their hand in the air in every class, and I spoke up too much and I took up too much space and my clothes were too colorful and like all these other things. And now it's like kind of the opposite. Like I like internalize this idea that the bullies were correct. So like if I take up less space, if I'm less loud, I deserve to be in the places
treated
I'm
better.
in. Pardon?
Deserve to be treated better. Like if I do all these things, then I won't be bullied.
Yeah, that's part of it for sure. And also just like earning a spot in the room is definitely like part of it.
I would counter that with saying you always deserve a spot in the room. And learning how to believe that. Look, I know that it's easier said than done, right?
Sure.
But learning how to believe that can get rid of that. Like, I need to earn myself a spot. I need to take up less space, wear less colorful clothes, because we should all be able to express ourselves at any age, like in adulthood too, right? We need to remember things follow us from childhood. I mean, look at my story today too, right? You deserve to express yourself in colorful ways.
Yeah. And I do feel better when I do that. Like even yesterday, it was just warm enough to not wear a jacket, but like still wear a big sweater. So I had this
the
like
first fake spring day of the year.
First fake spring. And so I did wear this really colorful sweater and I did feel like more myself. But then when I was at the dog park, I did try to like stay in my own little corner and that's like a couple of other things too. Because like my dog wasn't behaving the best and I was trying to like calm her down and stuff. Where then there's like all these other people having a conversation and I kind of want to jump into the conversation, but I also kind of want to like keep my distance to make sure I'm not monopolizing the conversation or like making sure I'm invited into the conversation before I just like jump on a tangent, you know?
So it's not that you're like not afraid of jumping in on the conversation. It's more, I want to make sure I'm invited in. I don't want to be judged.
And I also, like with a lot of things, like I want to just make sure that I'm not, like we've talked about this in other episodes where like, is it that I'm trying to be quieter because of like societal pressure to be quieter? Or am I actually trying to be more respectful of the space and sharing the time with others and letting them speak?
Probably a little bit of both. Right. I think I think with anything in life, especially these things that are difficult to talk about, and we're talking about it right now, is there's a fine line between the two sides, right? Or there's it's a balancing act almost of awareness, empathy, like it's a balancing act, right? So yeah, again, I just want to thank you. Like, I want to thank you. Like, you're so good at saying what that fine line is for you and being like, I want to make sure I'm not this and not this. Right. Or that I'm more this than this, or I'm afraid. Okay. So, sorry. I just have one more question, because I think, a goal for anybody that's kind of experiencing what Shadoe experiences, and I've experienced it too, the bullying. I mean, a good goal is, or a good kind of exercise or way to like look at these things, is to tap into the fear and then ask the fear if it's true. Like, for example, this is what my question was going to be is, so you have fear of running into these people. You said, like, I have fear of running into these people in this new city I'm living in. You're not even living in the same city. And the odds of that happening are really slim. Right. This kind of like the theory behind cognitive behavioral therapy, right? It's like, has it ever happened? If it did, what happened when it happened? And then do the math. How many years have you been living here? How many hours have you been living here? How many days have you been living in Toronto? Has it ever happened? No. So 0% chance. Or if it happened once out of like 10 years, what percentage of that is? Like, use the rational side of your brain. Kind of like what I was saying about aging. Like, if I flip it and do some math, so the rational side of my brain understands, well, I'm 40, but I still have 60% of my life yet, because I plan on living to be 100, right? Has it ever happened?
That's such a good question, because I have run into people from elementary school in my new city, but only people who I wouldn't identify as bullies. And so I wonder if that is that, like, maybe those bullies do live here, and even if we were in the same room, neither of us would say hello to each other.
What was the experience like when you ran into people from elementary school that weren't bullies?
Amazing. Like, honestly, it was so cool. And of course, like, the one day I actually saw like my best friend from grade 6, and he like pulled over and got out of his car.
That's
and
awesome.
Was like, is that you? And I was like, oh my God, is that you? And like, we had this like really nice interaction. And I, of course, was like looking my scrubbiest that day. I had like
but it didn't matter because they remembered
like,
you as a person.
Yeah, I know, but it was still just like this, like, oh, of course I would be dressed like this. And like, I did kind of replay in my mind a few times that like him going back to Sudbury, and maybe he is still friends with the people that like hurt me, and then him being like, oh, I saw Shadoe in Toronto, and them going, ew, Shadoe, gross. Like, I still created this narrative in my head that like, even though he pulled over on a busy city of Toronto street, that like, if he told people that he saw me, those people would act like they did as children. Which
have you grown since you were a child? Yeah, exactly. Like, have you grown since then?
Yeah, exactly.
They probably have too.
Totally.
Maybe they're listening to this podcast right now saying, I need to write a let's relieve regret letter to myself about bullying Shadoe. You know, like maybe they regret it.
I look back too, and like, I actually just watched a movie on the weekend. It's on Crave, called The Exchange. And it's a Canadian movie set in 1986, rural Ontario or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's just like a comedy, and it's about this like geeky guy who ends up having a foreign exchange student living with him. And like, if you watch a lot of CBC comedies, you'll recognize a lot of the cast. Funnily enough, the movie made the point that like, even though this nerdy kid is being bullied, like, some of it he did bring upon himself. Like, some of it he was just being a shit, and he wasn't necessarily being bullied. He was actually being told like, hey, that's not cool. But he was interpreting it as bullying. And I wonder how many times as a kid, like, I know I can definitely count the times that I for sure know that it was like wrong that I was bullied. But like, the more I think about it as I get older, there's probably some times where like, I did kind of deserve it, and not in any kind of like, oh, I deserve to be hurt kind of way, but like, I did deserve to be told like, no, that's not how we're going to do things. Like, so yeah, I'm getting a much more I guess like a multifaceted view on how social conditioning happens. And like, like our families don't know everything. And so like the way we're thrown into the world is based on like family conditioning and like whatever other like media influences you have and like like friends and stuff like that. Yeah. And so sometimes, not that bullying is good. I'm never going to say bullying is good. Like, that's not what I mean. There were some times where I think like, I don't think there is anyone out there like upset that they bullied me. I really don't think like any of the people who bullied me would know that they've continued to have an impact on me up until like the end of my 20s. Like they would almost consider that like either hilarious or weird, because they would be like, who, what? Like, I don't even remember that person.
That goes into like perception, right?
Yeah.
That's like your perception.
I guess.
And yeah.
There's a couple names where like actually like my mom did run into someone from my elementary school like a year or so ago. And I was upset for like 6 months. And like my mom told me that they had the most positive like interaction. And I was still like, how dare you be nice to my mother after being such a prick to me 20 years ago?
Yeah.
And like, what? Like, who cares? Like, he still lives in my hometown. He's doing his own thing. I'm doing my own thing. And like, if he feels bad about it, like, cool, I guess. But like, if he doesn't feel bad about it, also cool. Like,
well, I think it activated something in you, right? So I think we've talked about this before. I run a letting go like chat and visualization class every Friday. And one of the things that comes up that we talk about quite a bit is forgiveness, and how forgiveness is about you. It's not about the person that offended you. You need to forgive. There's something that you need to forgive in yourself about it. And when you get activated, that's a good time to kind of explore that, right? I need to forgive myself for allowing myself to be put in that situation, maybe, or I need to forgive myself for not being the person that I wanted to be in that moment. You need to forgive yourself for that, right? Forgiveness, if you do it for yourself, is the best way to take your power back. Right? If you start thinking about forgiveness as a way to take your power back, it doesn't mean you're forgiving your offender right to their face and letting them off the hook for, I get a lot of slack about this. We'll see what happens on our Instagram account after this, but it's not about forgiving them for what they did to you. It's about forgiving whatever it is that activates in yourself so that you can get relief. It's about, forgiveness is about taking your power back. It's not about giving the power back to the person that's offended you or hurt you.
Oh, for sure.
But figuring out how to do that in your own way is important. Right. But when you can figure out how to do that, which is kind of what we're doing on this podcast, like we decided to do this experiment to say, let's talk about the things we regret and forgive ourselves for our behavior in the past. Right. Can be a very powerful way to take your power back. And maybe next time you won't be activated when your mom says, I ran into someone, because you learn how to forgive yourself for that. If that, does that make sense?
Oh, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm even thinking about like, not just in the moment, but like, I have this very specific memory from the 6th grade about this person that I'm not going to name, but I feel like I've put that moment on loop in my brain for years. And like, it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel stupid. All this kind of stuff. And like, I have to forgive myself for allowing that replay, I guess, because like that replay served no purpose other than to like make me feel bad. So like that perpetual victimhood, right? So like if I already felt bad about anything, that was like a clip on my highlight reel that could make me feel really bad really fast. And like, so I think that's part of it too, is that like, because he's the source of that memory from the 6th grade that I've replayed to like broken record status in my brain. Like, that's got to be part of why when he saw my mom and was nice to my mom, it activated me in such a deep way. I have to forgive myself for allowing that replay and for probably continuing to allow it, because at this point it's like bored a hole in my wiring. It's not like something I can just patch.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a lot. I think we could talk about it a lot, but I know as we continue on our experiment in this podcast, bullying is going to come up more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I want to thank you for being super vulnerable and just honest about where you're at with it and about how it still affects you now, and about the work that you've done, and that you know that you're continuing to work on yourself. And we all need to hear that. We all need to hear, hey, I'm working on myself still. Right. And you and I are both working on ourselves. Right. Yeah. Sorry, say what you're going to say.
I was going to say, I thank you for asking the questions to let me air it out more. Because I feel like it was still pretty tightly wound. But I think this conversation has really helped.
Good. Big breath.
Speaking of big breaths, should we go into our breaths for letting go?
Let's do it. If you want to join in, everybody, please come to the front edge of your seat, put your feet on the floor, and just know that gravity, feel your feet on the floor, and just know that gravity is always supporting you. The earth is always supporting you and holding you. Put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Take a big breath and say to yourself, I release pressure and let go of expectations. On this next breath, I relieve my regrets. My past does not define me. And on this next breath, I'm excited to learn forward with what I've learned from my past. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing your reactions on our Instagram account, of you staying in touch with us. And we will see you again next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. This episode of Let's Relieve Regret was produced by Shadoe and Victoria Muir-Bercia.
Editing by me, Victoria Muir-Bercia.
We are an independent podcast supported by you, our listeners.
If you think this podcast sends a valuable message, you had an aha moment, or learned something new about yourself, help us realize our goal of reaching as many listeners as possible.
We encourage you to take action and support us right now by choosing one of the following options.
You can easily support us by
following us on Instagram at relieve.regret.
Tell 2 friends.
Leave a 5-star review on whatever app you're listening to us on.
Leave a tip at coffee.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast. That's ko-fi.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast.
Join our conversations in the Facebook group, Let's Relieve Regret Podcast.
Find all this information, all the links, and more in the podcast notes. Okay, bye.
Bye.